Hey everybody, what's going on? Another episode of Real Estate Investing 365 with Justin Hanna. That's me. And today I got an awesome guest. His name's Morgan Eriksson, and he's from Greenville, South Carolina. Pretty hot market. How's it going, Morgan?
Yeah, it's going well. How are you doing, man?
Good. Thanks for being on today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, so you're in the Greenville, South Carolina market. I hear it's a pretty busy market. Why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself and you maybe touch on your market and why do you think it's such a great place to buy and get investment properties?
Yeah, so again, my name is Morgan Eriksson. I am a part-time realtor. 29 years old, just turned 29 last Friday, so August 2nd, so day of recording. But yeah, it's great. So for my day job, I do business development and vendor relations for a IT distributor that's headquartered here in Greenville, and I cover U.S. and Canada. So on the road quite a bit, about every other week on an airplane, going somewhere in the U.S. So kind of come from that sales, business development type background. And I was born and raised here in Greenville, which is actually pretty unique. Most people here, we jokingly call, belovedly call carpetbaggers, because they've all moved up here from places like Philadelphia, New Jersey, Ohio, New York, and Greenville is quite changed. So it's very rare that you find someone that's born and raised in Greenville, South Carolina. So born and raised here, went to school down the road in Clemson, which is another booming market, about 30 minutes south of Greenville. We've won a couple football championships recently, and it's another booming real estate market. But Greenville is flying high right now. When the recession hit in 2007 and 8, I didn't know much about real estate. I just knew that we were kind of not really affected by it. We were kind of shielded because so much of our business right now is international. BMW manufacturing is headquartered here. Michelin's headquartered here. All their suppliers are headquartered here in the U.S., as well as a few big IT distributors like the one I work for and things like that. So we've been pretty sheltered from the economies of Charlotte, which was a huge financial hub, and Atlanta, which is just a huge business hub in general. So Greenville's directly in between Atlanta and Charlotte, about an hour 20 to Charlotte and about 2 hours to Atlanta. So it's pretty well sheltered there, and people are moving here left and right just because it's a great community. Our downtown's one of the top downtowns that you'll ever find. Our parks are amazing. City is clean. We're a big food culture, so we get a lot of food tourism here. All of our restaurants on our downtown street are not chains except for one. We have one, Sticky Fingers, which is like a barbecue chain, but everything else is the local mom and pop restaurants, farm to table. That's like a big movement here, and beer as well is moving down south. So kind of like become this like little hipster subculture of the Southeast. So
Yeah, no, Greenville seems great. I'd love to take a trip out there. I know a lot of people are trying to invest out there right now, and it seems to have still a good price to rent ratio and that sort of thing, but it's extremely nice. And like you said, it's nice. It's protected economically, it seems, with so much diversity and employment and things like that. So
yeah.
that's cool. So you've been there your whole life. Did you know anybody that was in real estate investing, or what got you into real estate investing to begin with?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I didn't know anyone into real estate investing. I wasn't like a book reader or anything like that. I wasn't into motivation or anything like that at all. My parents bought a lake lot. I remember when I was in 5th grade that they were going to build this house on, and that's where we were going to move, and that was going to be our home. They never ended up building on it. They still own it. But I just remember, like, I put the 2 and 2 together, that there's scarcity with land, and that like real power is in things that are scarce, and land is the ultimate resource. And I was like, well, if you can just own a ton of land, eventually that land's going to be worth something, and then that will make you rich. And that was like, me in 5th grade mindset, not really knowing much about money other than you have to save a lot of money, and so that was my mindset. That's been my parents' mindset. My parents are not investors. I grew up in a pretty, safe life. I didn't grow up hard. My dad traveled for months at a time. He worked in textiles, and he's originally from Sweden. So he's Swedish and kind of comes from that Swedish conservative mindset, in terms of finances. But he'd be gone for a month or two and everything. That's like, I guess, the hardest thing I had to deal with growing up. So I kind of fell into real estate investing when my dad was on one of his business trips, and I had just graduated college, and I had saved up some money, and my parents had given me some money. And I was looking at apartments, and I was like, I'm going to move out of my parents' house. I'd been graduated for like 3 months, and I had a job, which I was really proud of because the economy was bad when I graduated in 2012 and no one was hiring. And so I had a decent job, and I was like, I'm going to go find an apartment. And, looked at a couple of apartments, and rents were like $1,300 a month. And I was only making basically $28,000 a year at the time. And I was like, that's a lot, that's not going to work. And a house came up for sale in my neighborhood, and my dad's like, well, why don't you just go look at this house? Like, you have money saved up, you have enough for a down payment, and your income's going to go up because you're in sales. And I was like, sure. We looked at it, and it needed a lot of work, and we didn't buy it. But then my dad was gone for like another 2 months. And so I just went with the realtor and saw this foreclosure condo for sale for $68,000. And I had $20,000 saved up. So we put in an offer on it. I went with my mom, and my mom's not handy. My dad is super handy. Like, guy could fix the Titanic somehow. Like, he could pull the Titanic up and make that thing float. It'd be going across the Atlantic Ocean again. Like, the man is a genius. He's an engineer by trade. He's got tons of patents and stuff. So he's super smart, mechanical guy. But I was with my mom, and my mom's like the social butterfly. So she brought me out with a realtor who doesn't know anything about fixing stuff up and things like that. And I noticed there was like a slight smell in the house, and I couldn't figure it out. And it had this nasty carpet, and the kitchen was old. My mom was like, just put in an offer on it. You and your dad can do the kitchen and the bathrooms and redo the floors, and it'll be all good. And so, I went through the whole motions of it, and I hated it. I hated pulling all the bank records and everything, showing how I saved money and doing all that. But I ended up buying this condo for $68,000. And then my dad comes in right before closing and is like very disappointed in me. I bought this place because it was a piece of crap. And growing up with a Swedish father, they show disappointment in different ways, and it was hard. But ended up having to pretty much gut all the subfloor in the house. The previous owners had pets, and they used plywood underneath the carpet, and so the pets had peed so much in the house that the plywood was disintegrated into powder.
Oh man.
It smelled so bad. And I noticed it didn't smell that bad when we walked through the house, but the bank had actually put air fresheners in the home on top of the cabinets where we couldn't see them. That like neutralized the smell. And it was so bad. I literally took a shovel and was cracking the subfloor and shoveling powdered plywood, basically, that was just covered in cat piss and dog piss. And it smelled so bad. But it was actually really cool. I got to be closer with my dad, and we put about 13 grand worth of work into the house. So 13 grand down, 13 grand into work. We did all IKEA kitchens. Fun fact, my dad's actually from the area that IKEA is headquartered in Sweden. So I have to, pretty much use IKEA cabinetry for any of that stuff, which is pretty high quality stuff if you've ever used it in a flip or reno. Works pretty well. But we gutted the whole house, which is a condo, so 1,100 square feet, and we're able to do the renovation for 13 grand. And I lived in it for like a year and sold it and made $75,000.
Oh, wow. Okay. So
Yeah.
that ended up being your first deal. Unbeknownst to you, that was your entry into real estate investing.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I think me and my dad probably could have killed each other like 10 times throughout that whole process, but it was so worth it. And at the end of the day, my mortgage payment was $300 a month while I lived there. So, and it was on a golf course, like in a country club community on one of the best private golf courses in the Greenville area. So it was quite nice.
Yeah. Okay. So let's dig into it. Just, I know you told a great story about how you got it and everything, but what type of financing did you get for the property?
So at the time, I didn't know anything about financing at all. I probably would have done maybe a 15-year note. I'm glad I didn't though, but I did a 30-year note, 20% down, no PMI, no nothing.
Okay. And you found it with the realtor, you said, and luckily it
Yeah.
was a great time in the market, 2012. So it was a foreclosure. Um,
Mhm.
what, so let's see, what were the key factors for that deal that really, I guess that got you to move on with the deal? You know what I mean? I guess it was really that you didn't know what you didn't know at the time because you hadn't done any real estate, right?
No, I hadn't done a single deal. I hadn't been in. I only walked two other houses before that, and I was like, well, I like golf. I think I was just trying to get into golf. I was like, I
Hmm.
like golf. This place is cool. I like stuff with a modern style. So it was built in like the 70s and kind of had like a little bit of a modern flair to it, like a lot of windows. I was like, oh, this will be cool. Like, I'll have friends over. We can sit on the deck, shit balls at 9 o'clock, because it doesn't get dark here till late right now in the summer. And I'll be able to, live cheaply. But, when my dad came home from, I think he was actually coming back from Sweden, and I was like, oh shit, like, what did I buy?
Yeah.
It was like, oh God. That's
Yeah.
when it started to sink in.
So how long did you end up owning the property for? Did you say that?
I think I owned it for a total of 4 years.
Okay. And then you ended up selling the property and making a big chunk of change off it, right? 75
Yeah,
grand?
yeah, yeah. That was life-changing money for sure.
Yeah, no, that's good. So why did you decide to sell it and not keep it as a rental or do something else with it?
So my initial plan after I had lived there, so it took us a year to renovate it because my dad was traveling and stuff, and like there's certain things I didn't know how to do, so I'd wait on him, and I'd sleep at my parents' house, and but once I had didn't done this work, and I kind of saw the property value go up, and I was like, oh, well, like I want a garage, and I can't have a garage here, so maybe I'll keep this as a rental. And how it came up was a buddy at work needed temporary housing because he bought a new house, but it had a construction delay, and so he needed somewhere to live for like 6 months. And he looked at a 2-bedroom house with his wife and his kids, and it was like $1,600 a month for an apartment for 6 months, and it wasn't as nice as mine. And I was like, well, shoot, I'll rent you my place. And so we went through the process of trying to rent it because I thought I could rent it because my neighbor next door was actually renting from his brother. And I went through the process of trying to rent it, and the HOA shot it down and said, hey, we're not going to allow any more renters anymore. I'm like, well, what do you mean this guy's renting? And they're like, yeah, we don't do that anymore. I'm like, so then I realized I had to sell it. And that selling it with the HOA was actually pretty hard as well. So
Okay, so what was some mistakes that you made on the property that you wouldn't necessarily make now that you've done all that?
I definitely would have, pulled the carpet back to try to see if there was cat piss eating through the floor. I didn't even do that. Like, we just had a quick inspection. I didn't even show up for the inspection. I definitely would have, knowing now what to look for, like things like mold and, noticing what weird smells might be. If someone's trying to cover something up with an air freshener, I typically, see that as an opportunity now
Right.
to maybe negotiate. But definitely the mistakes we made, we did it pretty smart. Like, we bought all the materials on Black Friday at Home Depot, with the exception of the IKEA cabinetry, which they don't really do sales. So we bought that separately. But I mean, I was able to get the floor for next to nothing, the backsplash from next to nothing, the lighting fixtures. I mean, for literally 50% off.
Yeah,
So
I mean, you mentioned that you did the whole investment for $13,000, so or the whole renovation, anyways. So that's a pretty good deal. I guess a main mistake, I guess, that you made would be that you just didn't do enough due diligence ahead of time. Is that correct in saying that?
yeah, Absolutely. I mean, that's totally I think the key now for anything I buy is due diligence. And like some things that might scare you away, like things like I came out blessed, at the end because it turned into be a pretty good deal. But, for a lot of people, that cat piss, in the floor, they probably would have noticed that, and that would have scared them away from not buying it. But when you really look at it, like plywood's fairly cheap.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to rip up the carpet anyways because it's nasty, but the plywood's pretty cheap. Laminate flooring is not expensive, especially when you're at 1,200 square feet. And so you just kind of quickly run those numbers. Like if a sheet of plywood costs you X dollars and your laminate's like $2.99 a square foot or whatever it is, you can do that math and instantly realize that, okay, like, I think the traditional buyer is going to be scared, but that could be your competitive advantage to offer higher on a property when you're in a competitive market, is if you kind of know what you're working with there. But due diligence is key. I mean, if I had done more due diligence, I probably wouldn't have bought it.
Yeah. So it's kind of, on one hand, you might say it's a mistake, but on the other hand, not knowing what you don't know when you're first getting started can be a blessing sometimes, because those type of things, if you do know them before getting started, might prohibit you from even doing your first deal, and then you never know what can come. So it's better just to jump in. Don't lose money, but like Brandon Turner on Bigger Pockets always says, just do your first deal, and even if you lose a little bit, it's better than not doing the deal at all, because you learn so much in the process, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And now the issue that I've had, for the spacing in between this deal and this rental I'm going through, it is the fact that I know stuff now. And so I'm being hyper analytical over every single thing. And that's, I think, knowing too much can almost be a huge detriment to people like me who, I unfortunately have to battle with the fear. Like that's something that always stops me from doing stuff, is fear, right? Like I'm overthinking everything constantly.
Yeah.
So eventually you just have to take action. And I think that's the key for any investor really is to take action, know you're going to trip, but like, every running back that's ever played in the NFL has been tackled.
Yeah.
So you got to get hit. I mean, it's just a matter of you picking up and keep running.
That's it. That's totally true. So you sold that property after maybe 4 years or so. You made a good chunk of change. What did you do with that money next? What was your next move?
So I had some debts I had to pay off. Like I paid off my car. I paid off my engagement ring for my wife, and I paid a credit card debt that I had. And so now I'm totally debt free, and put that towards the house that we're in now as well. So I had 40 grand saved up after all that, paying off the car, the engagement ring, and a small credit card debt. And so now that's what I'm using to spiral into this rental, but I'm also using some of that money for marketing for off-market deals.
Okay, so you used the money, paid off some debt, you got into another primary residence that you're in now, and plus you're buying a rental property, correct?
Under contract right now for the first rental property.
Okay, so tell me about that rental property. What is it? A single family home, a small multi, what is it?
It's a single family home. It's a 3-bed, 1.5-bath house in the Greenville city area. It's in a developing neighborhood, I'll say, neighborhood that's mostly working class. Median rents in that market are about $1,100 a month. They're asking 109. I'm under contract right now for 90. And you and I were talking earlier, I'm in the process right now of negotiating that down even further due to moisture damage. So
Okay, that's a great return. So some people listening to this show, they're on the coast. I mean, you're on the coast also in South Carolina, but in bigger cities or out here in California or Denver, these markets, man, they'd love to get $1,100 on a $100,000 purchase. So that's a pretty sweet deal. How'd you end up finding this deal? You mentioned you're a realtor, so is this something you found on your own, or did you use somebody else, or what?
Yeah, so I found it on my own, and for in between this deal and that deal, I'd done an off-market wholesale, and that's what I was looking for, was really a deal to find off-market. But I just recently, I was fairly fresh and I was like, you know what, this house has been on the market for a little bit. It cash flows according to the 1% rule. And then the realtor posted in a Facebook group, they were asking 109. And he said, hey, is anyone willing to take a look at this house? Like, I'll take 95 cash. And then so I was like, ding, ding, ding. Like, if they're willing to take 95 cash, and he's like, my seller really needs to sell. He bought a new house. Step one, if you're working with a realtor that exposes things like that, that's a big no-no. They're not supposed to tell things like that without your permission. So I instantly knew there was motivation to sell. And this area isn't in like a trendy area of Greenville. Again, it's in a blue collar neighborhood. Pretty safe neighborhood. It's not sketchy. It's just blue collar. I mean, it's, guys that are plumbers and construction workers live in this neighborhood. So like, you know what, I'll just go on my lunch break and check out the house. Walked in, I was like, it needs about 10 grand worth of work. And I was like, so I offered him 87,000 and he countered at 90. And I was like, got it. And then so I've been under contract, but then I did the inspection and we found like $8,000 worth of mold repair that needed to be done. I had a quote, and there's some soft spots in the kitchen and bathroom. And turns out there was some water damage there. So I need some subfloor replacing there. So I have experience doing that. No, that's not that big and scary. There's an issue with the electrical box on the side of the house. But what the seller doesn't know is that that's really the electrical company's issue, not the homeowner's issue. So yeah, knowledge in this space has allowed me to hopefully make some more margin on the deal.
That's good. Right on. So how are you funding the deal? Are you getting conventional financing or?
Yeah, I'm doing conventional financing. I've been blessed with a great credit score and good financial habits. And again, I had, $40,000 sitting around cash that was liquid that I needed to deploy. So I'm going to take that, I think hopefully I can get it for 75, after we renegotiate the mold issue. And then, use the rest of that for some renovations in the bathroom and kitchen and paint and peel the popcorn ceiling off.
Yeah, cool. So once you do your renovation, are you going to maybe cash out, refinance it and do maybe the BRRR method, or what are you thinking on that?
So when I initially got it under contract at 90, I was thinking it was going to just be 10 grand worth of work. And then I wasn't really going to improve the value of the house that much by doing that, but just making it, a safe, livable home and being able to rent it for $1,000 a month. But now that I think I found like a hole here to where I could maybe get it down lower to 75, the BRRR method is definitely seeing appealing. It's not going to be this record-breaking BRRR, but I think with the ARV now, if I'm able to redo the bathroom and kitchen now entirely, I think the ARV is going to be somewhere around anywhere from 130 to 150, depending on if one house in the neighborhood sells for what I think it's going to sell for. And if that's the case, I could cash out everything I've put into it.
Sweet.
Take that and redeploy it. Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be perfect. So the BRRR method, do you want to explain that to the audience if they don't know what it is?
Yeah, so the BRRR method is buy, rehab, rent, refinance, and the last R is repeat. And it's something that bigger pockets guys have kind of coined, but it's been around, I guess, forever. People have been kind of doing this, and in a market where interest rates are really low, it works. But basically, you find a property, and it can't just be any property. Think of it as a property, and I think this is a common misconception that is thrown around the internet, that you can BRRRR just about any deal, but it still needs to be a deal. Like, you can't just BRRRR a retail house. It actually needs to be a deal. So I'd say BRRRRs work best with properties that you might consider buying as a flip. So basically, look at the house as a flip, but you're buying it maybe with hard money or maybe conventional like I am, and you do your renovations. So say you buy a house for $75,000 and it needs $25,000 worth of work. You buy it, you do your $25,000 worth of work in it. That's the first R, rehab. And then you wait a few months because you do have to let the thing season if you're using conventional financing, or maybe hard money, you won't have to. But then the third R is refinance, or the second R is refinance. So you refinance, you do what they call a cash out refi. So you pull out your equity. Most lenders will let you keep about 25% LTV, so or 70% somewhere, depending on where you're at. So you can pull out your equity and redeploy that for another deal. But meanwhile, you have the property rented. One other gotcha that I think people also don't think about is you still want the deal to cash flow. And so what often happens is while the deal might cash flow initially, it might not cash flow after you refinance. And that's like, I think, a conundrum that a lot of people who have listened to great podcasts like Bigger Pockets don't often think about, is you need to make sure that as you're doing these improvements, rent is also going to increase.
Right. Yeah. Especially right now, you know what I mean? Who knows where the market's going? It's been up for a long time. We're in a big old bull run market. It could keep going, but right now is definitely not the time to be speculating, I don't think. And, taking all the money out and just planning on appreciation isn't the way to go. It's kind of where people got burned in the last recession or downturn. So, well, that's good. That sounds like a plan. I mean, it sounds like it's going to work out. Are you going to manage it yourself, or are you going to have a management company do it?
No, the brokerage I work for actually just started a property management division. So I talked to the broker and I was like, hey, do you want to be the first property you manage? So it's going to be managed by the brokerage that I hang my license with. So
okay. That is one thing I wanted to ask you is, so you are a real estate agent. You said you're a part-time agent. Now, do you find it beneficial being an investor, having your license, or, what's your thoughts on that?
Yes and no. I think everyone kind of answers either probably yes or no. Like they just say yes or no, because it's definitely got its drawbacks. I think it's, for me, very beneficial. I'm a knowledge junkie. The whole reason I decided to get my license actually was I got fed up with other agents who wouldn't get back to you, slow to respond. Investors typically aren't the best clientele for your traditional real estate agent. And so I was like, you know what, I'll just get my own license and show houses, whenever I want, just go into them, and check them out, kind of get first dibs on it and control the whole process. That's why I originally got it. And for that purpose, it's paid off greatly. But I do a lot of off-market things, like we're working on some wholesale deals and direct-to-seller type markets. And the drawback to that is realtors tend to have a bad rap with a lot of the population. And you have to disclose the fact that you're a realtor. And while I haven't necessarily had anybody push back and say, well, I'm not going to sell my house to a realtor on the wholesaling side, you do have to disclose the fact to everyone that you meet that you are a realtor in the transaction. So,
right. Yeah, I
think it's worth it.
Yeah, as long as, I think it is too. I have my real estate license in California and in Idaho, and they're both inactive right now. So I'm not really having to do anything with that, but I will be going active back in Idaho. And so all my wholesaling stuff I'm doing and my direct mail marketing, I'm going to have to switch that over and say, that I am a realtor. But I think the benefit of being able to access the properties and different things like that does outweigh the cons maybe. But you do have to pay for your real estate license and your fees and find a brokerage to hang your license at and things like that. So there's a lot more to think about than just, oh yeah, sure, I'll go get it on in a couple months and it'll be good to go. So yeah, good points on that. I appreciate that.
And one other one to think about too is, like, I don't know if the laws are different in California or Idaho, but in like South Carolina, if I have a partnership with someone that's not a realtor, I can't necessarily pay them a commission fee, like, or a referral fee or anything like that. So that kind of threw like a wrench in some relationships I had prior.
Oh, okay.
It's all worked out now. So that's something to think about. Like, you can't pay a non-licensee like a referral fee or anything like that. So
yeah, I think we have the same thing in both California and Idaho, but I'm sure there's ways around that, maybe equity partner or
JV deals or something with an LLC, I'm sure, but
yeah,
it just makes things harder. It's more steps. And
yeah, no, I understand that. So cool. So For these deals that you're buying, do you have any specific criteria for the deals? Like you mentioned, this one's like well over the 1% rule. Do you have a cash on cash or anything like that?
Yeah, so the first thing I look at when I'm looking at a rental and is really on a rental's 1% rule. Ideally, try to find some sort of way where I can either negotiate down, like because in South Carolina, any house you walk into is gonna, if it has a crawl space, it's going to have mold issues. Like it's going to be there, especially in the summer, especially when it's rainy. And so the minute you mention the mold word on an inspection report, it's like a price reduction. And most buyers get scared and try to walk away from the deal, and most homeowners get scared too. So if you feel mold's not that big and scary to me anymore. I've dealt with the house that I actually sold. I had to do $5,000 worth of mold remediation, but it's not scary unless it's chewing away at the beams in the house. So I always look for the 1% rule on a rental, or a 12% cash on cash.
Okay. Yeah, those are pretty good criteria to stick to. And the 1% rule doesn't always mean you're going to make money, but you have a great chance of cash flowing after all your expenses and everything and setting aside for repairs with the 1% rule. That's for
Yep.
sure. So, okay, great. Well, where are you headed from now? What's your plans? Where you want to go? Stick with the single family or what's going on?
No, my big plan down the road is to own an apartment complex and get into the apartment syndication stuff, and own a kind of unique property management side of the business that makes money through other ways other than rent, through things like TV, internet, and that type of services. Kind of start my own ISP, which is basically just white label AT&T or Spectrum or something like that, and sell it to my own apartment complex and have the tenants pay for those data. So that's something that I'm working on. That's like the grand picture. But immediately, I mean, ultimately, I'd like to get my real estate portfolio to the part where it could pay for my mortgage on my primary house. And that way, I think I would feel comfortable enough to jump ship at my day job and focus solely on the investing and realtor side of my business, to grow that, to continue to grow the the rental portfolio. I mean, the rentals is where the money is actually at. I mean, wholesaling and everything's great, and it's pretty trendy right now. I feel like wholesaling is like the next the hottest thing right now, but it's a short-term play. Rentals is my long-term goal, and getting to where it can cover my $1,500 a month mortgage is where I want to be before I jump ship. So
yeah, and really, especially on Bigger Pockets, or if you follow Brandon Turner, any of his webinars, he really breaks down to your cash flow goals, and you can really break it down quite easily and see that it's not going to take you that long to get to that $1,500 a month passive income. You know what I mean? So that's exciting.
yeah.
I think pretty quickly here, with what you've done so far, and you could hit that goal in no time.
Yeah, it's pretty conservative, and that's goal setting is like a huge thing. And I've kind of always set my goals conservative, which is kind of a bad thing, because once you hit those goals, it's like, now what? But yeah, I think I can accomplish that goal. I gave myself a timeline of 1.5 years. So really kind of been focusing, hitting the streets hard, and trying to get the wholesaling business to pay for more rentals.
Yeah.
And more marketing to where that is something where, if I only need really 4 or 5 deals, hopefully to cement me into covering my mortgage, to where I can feel like I can do real estate full time and help out others trying to get into the real estate investing space.
Yeah, that's great. I'm gonna have to tell you to get the book, Grant Cardone's book, the 10X Rule, and
Man,
blow them goals up.
I've read one of his books, not 10X Rule. I think it's like Sell or Be Sold or something like that from him.
There's a Sell or Be Sold, or Be Obsessed or Be Average, 10X Rule.
Yeah, and I enjoyed the book, but then I started like listening to him, and he just kind of like his like I'm like, I'm not into like I don't think I could ever join the military and just be screamed at.
Yeah.
Like his like hardcoreness, like just kind of like rubbed me the wrong way.
Yeah.
But no, like, yeah, his goal setting stuff is awesome.
Yeah. You either love them or you hate them. So,
Yeah,
but,
he's like a acquired taste, but I'm definitely, into like the Gary V's of the world. Grant's fine, but kind of rubs me the wrong way sometimes just because he is very big into, don't waste your time with single family
big
and
and
go and buy,
flamboyant.
yeah, go buy the multifamilies. And it's like, I mean, it makes sense, of course, but you got to start somewhere.
Yeah, no, for sure. And there's definitely different strategies. There's plenty of people out there have made tens of millions of dollars and owning hundreds and hundreds of single family homes. And then there's people out there that have apartment complexes, or there's people out there that say, I'm not going to do any of that. And I'm just going to do note investing or land deals, or, I'm just going to have a flipping business forever. So you just got to find your niche, and
Yeah,
you never know where it's going
absolutely.
to go.
And when I started learning about real estate investing, nobody was talking about mobile home parks at all.
Right.
And now everyone's like, well, shoot, I can make money off mobile home parks. Like, I'm going to go buy mobile home parks. And the conversation 3 years ago, if you listen to podcasts, were literally mobile home parks are terrible investments. And now all of a sudden they're starting to get, hedge funds and REITs investing in the mobile home parks. So
Yeah, everybody's into it.
things are going to evolve and change. And, the part I think that you constantly have to be as an investor is just aware of what's going on and use that advantage, your knowledge to make a decision that other people might hesitate to make.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. And yeah, you're right. The mobile home park thing is huge right now, which is fine. Multifamily was big for the last couple of years. I feel like it's, slowing down maybe just a hair. And then like mobile home parks and these other outlandish things, lots of people like to do what the new thing is. You know what I mean? So that's
Yeah.
fine. Everybody go to
You got
that
to
new
stay
thing.
focused.
Yeah. And open up some space for me in the small to medium multi stuff. I'm going to stick to that for sure.
Yeah. That's smart too.
So, okay, cool. Well, transitioning out here, what is a favorite resource you have? Where do you like to learn about real estate investing the most? A lot of people, it's a podcast or books or seminars. What's your go-to source?
So I've kind of like learned from everyone. So whether it be Bigger Pockets podcast is obviously where I started, um, or another one that I've really dug into is the Real Estate Disruptors podcast. It's really, he interviews a lot more of wholesalers, but it's a solid podcast. That's kind of where I get most of my real estate advice these days, um, from podcasts. But really, like learning from your local RIA, I think is a good thing, especially if you have some very good investors in your market. So Coach Carson comes to our local RIA. He's been on Bigger Pockets numerous times. He's a BP author. So he comes and provides a lot of, it's not necessarily free because you have to join our RIA, but he provides a lot of, cheap, sage wisdom that you wouldn't be able to find from everybody else. And I've been fortunate enough to become friends with other investors in this market that have kind of, they look out for you and advise you not to buy a deal. Like I was almost about to buy a deal, and this guy that I'm friends with, through my Bible study was like, hey, don't do this. Like, this is a terrible deal. And it saved me it could have saved me everything I had.
Mm-hmm.
And we ended up wholesaling that deal and making like $5,000 assignment fee. But,
Yeah.
without his advice, we totally would have pulled the trigger and bought this house and potentially lost everything we have. So I'm a combination of Bigger Pockets, which I'm a terrible contributor to. I'm not on the forum often at all, but one of my goals is to be on that forum contributing daily, whether that be just one post, answering someone's question. But BP forums are awesome. BP podcast is great. Their articles are awesome. But I think ultimately you really just got to talk to people in your market.
Yeah. Networking is key. And that's one thing that I'm really working on as well, because it's very hard for a lot of people to network. You know what I mean? It's awkward. A lot of people don't like to talk to other individuals. And once you start, though, it becomes way easier. And it's just something that seems very necessary.
Yeah. And I'm in the sales space and I go to networking events all the time. And if I could offer like one piece of advice for networking in groups, is maybe not talk about why you're there. Talk about other things. Like you see somebody with a Nirvana shirt and you're like, oh man, I love Kurt Cobain. Like I've been to his house, or, they grew up in, or, like random facts, or, hey, I saw you pull up in Tahoe. Like I really like Tahoes. Like I drive a Tahoe, or you're into Corvettes, or, find something else to connect people on that's not real estate.
Right.
Become their friend first. I think a lot of times, like you hear on Bigger Pockets where they're like add value, add value, add value. Well, when you're new, it can be really hard to add value for someone. So just become somebody's friend first.
Yeah, that's great advice. I like that.
Yeah, I think becoming someone's friend and is like huge. Whether you're cracking a witty joke or you buy somebody a beer, at the networking event, the RIA event, or whatever it might be. I think that goes a long way. But to really develop the relationship, you are going to have to add value. You are going to have to send people wholesale deals that you find off market that you don't send out to everybody else, that you only send out to one or two people. You are going to have to ask people, hey, like I might have a deal. Would you want to come walk it with me? Like things like that. Bigger investors that want to partner with you would be all over that,
Yes.
But you got to start with being a friend with somebody first before you can even ask them a random question like, can you lend me $40,000 or $100,000? Like,
Right.
you have to be able to have a conversation with them first.
Right.
So find a way to connect with them that's not potentially real estate.
No, that's great. I think that's probably the best piece of advice we're going to give on this episode right here is just that, like, especially when you're new, you don't know anything. You can't just go up to somebody and say, hey, what can I help you with? Because that takes time out of their day to figure out, okay, what can I have this person help me with? They have to it takes effort to tell somebody how to help you. So to become their friend first, have some conversations about other things. That's great advice. I really like that.
Yeah. And it's not going to happen the one networking event, right? You're going to have to exchange contact info and stay in touch with the person. Like it's not going to happen the first night you meet somebody that you're going to have a mentor or anything like that. It's something that you have to develop along the lines. And you don't just approach somebody and say, hey, would you be my mentor? That's
Right.
not how it works. A mentor, I think, is something that you fall into or versus like a formal ask, like, would you be my girlfriend?
All right.
type relationship. So
yeah. Okay. So what's a favorite app that you use? I'm sure you have an app that you use one more than the other or something like that.
Real estate related right now is Deal Machine. Non-real estate related is Google Chat.
Okay.
Or Hangout Chat, whatever they call it.
Yeah, those are both great. Deal Machine and Google Hangouts, I think it's called, right?
Yeah, they just came out with a new app, so I actually have both on my phone and it's on my computer, but it's kind of messy. I think they call it like Hangout Chat or
okay,
just Chat now, but yeah.
Okay, great. And what's your best advice that you could give to somebody just getting started in real estate before they've ever bought a deal? What's your best advice for them?
I think like you could always say like do research and learn and all of that. But I look at myself, and granted, I'm not a super successful investor, but the thing that made my first deal so sweet is I just took action, like dumb action, and it worked out. And so something that I struggled with in between that deal and where I'm at now was taking action and the fear behind it. And you and I are both in like a mastermind together, and one of the things that was talked about was fear. But if you really break down what that fear is, it makes it seem childish. So I think the thing that you have to do is take emotion and fear out of it and just do it.
Yeah, that's it. Just take action. Good deal. So on that same line, I always like to give a mindset tip. And that's we all fall into these ruts sometimes, or analysis paralysis, or we're like, we get down because we're not making progress like we hope. Is there something that you do that kind of gets yourself back on track, and can tell other people the same thing?
Yeah, like I have like a journal, and it's the Brendan Burchard's high performance plan like journal, and you start this out in like the morning, and it has like a mindset thing, and then you put in your schedule that you block out. But like I even find with that oftentimes I have like low points. So what I'll do at night is they have like a review your day section. But even like the next morning, like I write like really mean things to myself. And in the thing, like if I had like a really off day where I didn't accomplish what I wanted to or something like that, it's like, hey, like you sucked yesterday, like
Yeah.
have that conversation with myself that like this is a fireable offense. Like you suck that bad. They kind of like try to scare, like, I don't know, like motivate myself by saying like, this is not like Morgan Eriksson standards. Like yesterday stunk. And some days you have 2 days in a row that stink. And you got to come down on yourself like extra hard, that third day. And really it's just, like noting that I have higher standards than what I've been doing, I think has helped me a lot. And writing it down and saying like, hey, you sucked the last 2 days. Like, what are you going to do about it? And like literally writing that down on a piece of paper, it feels so weird because I work in a cube farm and I'm sure people have like come by and see this massive planner I have where in bright blue ink it says FU on the top corner. So, I'm sure people have seen that and think I'm like psycho, but I have to talk crap to myself and kind of, tell myself when I've had those low moments that it's not the standard that I've set for myself.
Yeah, that's great because I think writing something down and actually being able to see it, most people don't do that, but it does make a huge difference, whether it's that writing it down or having a vision board that you can fall back on or something like that. So that's great advice.
Yep.
Okay, so an influencer, is there some sort of social influencer that you like to follow that isn't just trying to make $1 million on Instagram?
Yeah, so there's a ton right now, and I've become kind of like a podcast junkie. And there's the obvious guys like the guys on Bigger Pockets, David Green and Brandon Turner, who are awesome, and everyone they have on the show is great. But I'll say some that I think are off the beaten path, and one is Andy Frisella with MFCEO. Huge Andy Frisella fan. He's pretty hardcore, but it really hits home for me and makes me feel like a wussy.
Yeah.
And so I really enjoy listening to his podcast and getting fired up about that and really realizing that the key is action. But then I also listen to guys like there's a guy named Kevin Sturdivant or Kevion. I found him through, you remember Drama from Robin Big? Robin Big.
Yeah.
Drama has like an amazing podcast called Short Story Long, where he interviews like successful people and they tell their stories. And so while Dramas isn't very motivating, he interviewed a real estate agent named Kevin Sturdivant, who's an agent in SoCal who has an incredible story. His podcast, which has fallen off in the last couple of weeks, it's amazing. Like his advice and everything is like very sage, and comes from like, I relate to it very well and I've enjoyed it. But his podcast, I'll plug it real fast. It is, hold on. I should have had this pulled up. Is Project Mindset.
Project Mindset by, what was the name again? Kevin what?
Kevin Sturdivant.
Sturdivant. Okay.
But he jokingly goes by Kevion.
Kevion.
Like his Instagram is Kevion because the whole idea behind it was his name was Kevin, but like he wanted to make himself seem like this high end real estate agent, and set that as his standard. So Kevin's just kind of a generic name. So he went by Kevion, to make it has some polish to it, and he's killing it in the LA area right now.
Some marketing magic right there, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate you being on today. Is there any where can people find out more about you, or any final words?
Yeah, right now it's Instagram. Instagram's where I'm going to be posting most of my stuff. I might one day come out with a real estate YouTube channel where I kind of go over really juggling two lives, being a full-time W-2 employee traveling every other week and doing real estate on the side. I'm going to probably come out with a YouTube channel with that. In fact, being on a podcast, I guess I should just commit to doing that. So I am going to come out with a YouTube channel, but Instagram is definitely where you can find me. I am at Morgan Eriksson 1.
Morgan Eriksson 1.
Yep.
Okay.
BRIKSSON 1.
Okay. And then you are a real estate agent. How would somebody contact you if they're looking for some property in Greenville, South Carolina?
Yeah, absolutely. If you're interested in investing in Greenville or looking for your first home in Greenville or out of state, please call me. My number is 864-483-3035. You can call me, text me. I work constantly, so don't feel bad if you texted me and you're in California and it's 3 hour time difference. Like, that doesn't bother me. I'm probably up. But yeah, I mean, we can basically I won't call it turnkey because it's not turnkey, but we could basically run a full remote turnkey operation for you out here in Greenville. So.
Right on. Well, Morgan, thanks again. I appreciate you being on. This was a great podcast, and I'll talk to you later.
Yeah, thanks, man.
All right, man. Have a good night.
See you.